Well, Joe's alive. I hope he's well. He's set to address the nation tonight at 7 o'clock Central Time as we will hear from Joe Biden, the President of the United States, for the first time since he announced via a letter posted on social media on Sunday afternoon that he was dropping out of the presidential race. He would not be running for re-election. And as time goes on, as the week goes on, I start to understand why the Democratic powers that be were so insistent that this thing happen and happen when it did. Because my thought process the last few days was, why not just wait till the guy gets over COVID? Let him address the American people like a normal sitting president in front of a TV camera, on the radio. You can see him, you can hear his voice, and tell the American people why he is stepping down, or not even stepping down, but just not running for re-election. Why not go about it that way? But with the way the media ecosystem has handled and treated Kamala Harris this week, well, it's very obvious why they thought they had to expedite this thing. They wanted to blunt the enthusiasm for the Republicans coming out of the RNC. And it was an outstanding Republican National Convention last week. So they wanted to kind of take the wind out of the Republican sails because they've been on this just banger of a run here the last month or so. The debate, the reaction to Trump nearly getting shot, the RNC last week. I mean, they have been clicking on all cylinders. So they didn't have time to wait for Joe to get over COVID. Because if Joe had not dropped out on Sunday, this week would have been more about how Donald Trump is likely to clean the clock of Joe Biden. And it would have been more of beating that same old drum. They had to change the media narrative as quickly as possible. And they basically said to Joe, put out the damn letter. We've got to get over this thing, and we've got to move on, and we've got to start raising money. We've got to start telling our friends in media to turn this thing around and turn it around fast. And that's exactly what you've seen the last 2.5, 3 days. So that's why this is playing out the way it's playing out. And that's why Joe will be heard from and seen tonight on camera, on radio. We'll air it on 95.7 FM KCMO at 7 o'clock. You will hear from Joe Biden this evening as to why he is dropping out of the presidential race and why he is not seeking re-election. That will air tonight on 95.7 FM KCMO and, of course, on 710 AM. So if you're in the car tonight or if you're at home, you can listen to it there. But it also begs the question about the issue of unity, which has also been a strength for the Republican Party over the Democratic Party in a way that we have not seen in quite some time. You know, it's typical that the Republican Party is usually more divided than the Democratic Party. The machine of the Democratic Party basically demands unity. But for the last month, you've seen that swing the other way. You've seen Democratic infighting over Joe Biden, his future, what it should be, what it was going to be. He's got to go. He's got to stay. And then you saw the Republicans coalescing around Donald Trump, not just after the debate, but also, of course, after the guy nearly got killed. And that was something that was, in many ways, possibly the tipping point to get Joe out, because the Republicans are never more unified than the Democrats. I mean, it's unheard of for the Republican Party to be more unified than the Democratic Party. But they have been for the better part of a month. Now, that's all changing as we speak. You've seen a very different media and Democratic Party here over the last 48 to 72 hours, but they still want to make sure that when it comes to this election, they've got all their ducks in a row, and they are going to do everything in their power to make sure that they have unification on their side. And you're seeing it from the federal level down to the state level, where every Democratic governor, including Laura Kelly in Kansas, has endorsed Kamala Harris, to the very local level, where Quentin Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, is retweeting stories about how mayors all over America are behind their girl Kamala. just look at Quentin Lucas's X timeline. You know, this guy was all in on Joe Biden, as we know, and as he talked about on this show. And he was somebody who always said on his social media pages, hey, Joe's our guy, leave Joe alone. Joe's got vigor. Joe's got strength. Joe's got everything that you need to do another 4 years in the White House. Nobody believed it, but that's what he was saying. And then suddenly they pull the rug out from under Joe. And, you know, Quentin Lucas is not alone in this, but a lot of people in his shoes are like, oh, yeah, Kamala's our girl. We love Kamala. We stand behind Kamala. It's like, come on. A week ago, you told us Joe was your man. This is the post that Mayor Lucas shared yesterday, and it read as follows. Over 250 mayors from across the nation announced their support today for Kamala Harris. And, you know, Quentin Lucas is in the photo with, it looks like, about maybe 36 other mayors, and you've got the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, in the photo as well. And Quentin Lucas is right over old Doug's left shoulder there, so it's quite a shot. But they're going for the unity play. They cannot be out-unified, for lack of a better phrase, than the Republicans. They don't want that at all.
Can't have that.
So you can't have it, John. You can't have it, man.
Mark and I were reminiscing about the days when the backup quarterback was one of the more popular athletes in this town. You know, the guy coming in to relieve. Oh, luckily we don't consider that now, but... you know, it's that theory. It's the giddiness of like, man, this isn't going well. Put the backup in. And they're, oh, you know, we all love the backup.
Yes, we all love the backup until the backup actually starts throwing passes.
Right. I liken that, right? Something's still going to happen. We're all giddy in the early days here. We love the backup.
There's still a debate coming.
Well, yes, and that's the thing. Don't forget that Kamala Harris was the media darling of the 2020 Democratic primary. They loved Kamala. They thought Kamala, and they wanted Kamala to be the female Barack Obama. And she fell flat on her face. I mean, I'm looking at this photo right here of when Kamala announced that she was running for president back in 2019. And she had this huge crowd, I mean, thousands of people there, and the media was ready to anoint her as the chosen one. And she did not make it to Iowa, the first primary, when her home state of California was like a couple of weeks later. That's how embarrassing it was. So this week doesn't freak me out. The media is doing its duty to their party to make her seem like the second coming of Obama. But the minute she gets off the cuff, the minute she starts actually getting out there and doesn't have this immense protection from her friends and media, it's not going to go well, because we saw this play out 4 years ago. This isn't me speculating or guessing. Her own party voters did not like her. She was polling behind Andrew freaking Yang 4 years ago of the Yang Gang. That's how bad it was. So this is all just the next chapter, the next story of what has been an insane 4 weeks of 2024, because tomorrow is 4 weeks to the day since that debate between Biden and Trump, which really kickstarted a ridiculous news cycle in this country. 913-4087-95.7 as we get it rolling on a Wednesday morning on KCMO 95.7 FM. We are continuing to get more details and more information on what the heck happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, almost 2 weeks ago now, where, of course, Donald Trump almost lost his life. There is some footage, some body cam footage that is getting out there now that we will share with you, and we also know exactly how many shots the gunman got off. We'll share that with you coming up on KCMO. Mark Alford, Missouri Congressman, will be here at the bottom of the hour, 6:35 on KCMO Talk Radio. I continue to be absolutely stunned by just the incompetency of the Secret Service. Now, the good news is, and it came down yesterday at the end of the show, Kimberly Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service, resigned, and that was, 9 days late. She should have resigned the day after Donald Trump came within a quarter inch of getting killed. But she finally resigned yesterday after just a disastrous testimony on Capitol Hill. But that being said, you look at where we are today, and we are starting to get, albeit slower than we should, more information in terms of what happened and what did not happen in Butler, Pennsylvania, a week and a half ago when Donald Trump nearly lost his life. And body camera footage has been released. This came down yesterday in the evening, and it was released by Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. This is from after Donald Trump nearly lost his life. The video was obtained from the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit. And in the footage, the men were discussing how they had noticed Thomas Crooks earlier before the incident unfolded. And you can hear the guys in the video. You've got investigators, you've got local police, you've got snipers. You hear them say Beaver County snipers saw him and sent the pictures out. Take a listen to this body camera footage from moments after the incident in Butler, Pennsylvania.
So this is the guy
yes, that they sent yes, Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay, all right.
Rifle's right there, obviously.
Got it. So the bike in the back. Is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
I
we're
don't
just
know.
treating that as suspicious device.
Oh, 1 second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? All right, so if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
So you've got snipers who saw Crooks, who sent pictures out, who then lost sight of him. But there is somebody suspicious who law enforcement had identified at this rally. And we know that this was the case. I mean, some of this was first reported early last week, but the body camera conversation is obviously a new development in the story. You've got all this that has come to the forefront now. We still have a lot of questions, but we at least know that this person was identified well before Donald Trump took the stage as being suspicious. And multiple levels of security and law enforcement lost sight of him, despite the fact that they had identified him as suspicious, and they had seen him roaming around the fairgrounds. They had seen him with a rangefinder. This audio references seeing him with a bike and then losing sight of him. But you have somebody who multiple levels of law enforcement had identified as suspicious, and Donald Trump was still allowed to take that stage in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is either gross incompetence and naivete or something far worse. I'm still sitting here this morning and saying to myself, in all the law enforcement we've talked to, in the people we've had conversations with on this show, folks with obviously decades of law enforcement experience, individuals who are snipers, individuals who have spent time in the Secret Service, I think this is an utter failure at every level of law enforcement. And yes, massive human error, but that's why it's so imperative that the Secret Service not wait 60 days to get key answers here. Because the more time you allow to unfold, the more time it allows people to come to their own crazy conclusions. That's just an unfortunate reality of human nature. Just like sometimes human nature, we can all be lackadaisical. We can all say, yeah, this person's kind of weird and it's a little suspicious, but you never expect a guy to climb up the ladder on the side of a building, not have somebody on that said building, and then take a shot within a quarter inch of taking out, a former president and the likely next president based on the odds and the polling of the United States. You wouldn't expect that. Human nature can and does oftentimes settle in. But it doesn't mean that we cannot and should not be demanding answers, and by the way, be demanding them immediately. Now, the other information that came out here in the last 12 hours or so, we now have, this is from CBS News last night, the gunman in Butler, Pennsylvania, fired 8 bullets in under 6 seconds before he was shot and killed by a U.S. Secret Service sniper. This is per an analysis of footage from the event by 2 audio experts that was given to CBS News. So you've got less than 6 seconds that Crooks is firing his weapon, and he got off 8 shots. And the fact that, only one person lost their life in all this is, when you think back to it, I mean, it's still a tragedy, but this could have been so much worse, not just because of, obviously, Donald Trump, but because of the thousands of other individuals who were at that rally that day just trying to take in the speech from this guy. So we're starting to get, and it's a slow drip. And by the way, think about this too. This news report this morning comes courtesy of CBS News, but it's after they had audio experts and video analysis and sworn statements from Pennsylvania State Police. This is not even coming out from the Secret Service. This is coming out from news reports who are getting information from local law enforcement, which is another sign of just pure and utter incompetency at the federal level. It's unbelievable. And that's where, if you are, I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, and that's why this has been one of the few bipartisan issues that we've seen on Capitol Hill over the last several months. And it was basically the demanding Kimberly Cheadle resign as Secret Service Director. That's what you saw on Monday in that disastrous testimony, and finally the American people got what they deserved, right, left, and in the middle yesterday. But it does not change that answers need to be gotten as soon as possible. And that's part of what I'm going to ask Mark Alford about coming up here, Missouri's 4th Congressional District. He's not on the House Oversight Committee, but what can be done to demand answers and not waiting 60 days to get some answers and, hope that this thing gets buried in the news cycle? It can't. I don't think it will, but I'm telling you right now, Republicans have got to lead the way on this, because actually there is some enthusiasm, rightfully so, I will add, by Democrats to get answers sooner rather than later from the Secret Service. I've been pretty impressed by some of these Democrats willing to stick their neck on the line and say, I don't care if it's Trump. You guys have to answer the questions, and you've got to get these answers sooner rather than later. Well, we officially have the most explosive ad of the 2024 election cycle here locally, and it will not be topped. No one is going to top this ad from Bill Eigel running for governor of Missouri. It's a TV ad. I have not seen it yet in the Kansas City area, but it is up in and around the state. And it's Bill Eigel standing side by side with a Spanish translator promising to deport illegal immigrants. Let's take a listen.
I'm Bill Eigel. I'm running for governor to crack down on illegal immigration.
Él es Bill Eigel y tomará medidas enérgicas contra la inmigración ilegal.
No more taxpayer handouts for illegals, period. Nada. Zilch. Zero.
No más ilegales, no más dinero, no más fiestas.
We're throwing them in jail and sending them back where they came from.
Ay, caramba.
Arriba.
It's time to take Missouri back.
Okay, Bill Eigel with an ad that will not be topped. That's exactly right. No one is topping that one. Now, Bill had the flamethrower ad. He went full, you wouldn't be a Missouri Republican running for office without some type of weapon in your hand as you do a campaign ad. But this one certainly tops Eigel's flamethrower ad. I don't think it's even all that close. Now, I just hope that the Spanish guy, I don't know where they found him. Carlos. I don't know if he's Mexican. I don't know what he is. I don't know where he's from. I don't know. What do you think about the guy? But he's like 5'2". I mean, Bill Eigel's a big guy, but he ain't that big, okay? And he's standing next to this guy, and this guy looks like he's like 4'10" on a good day. So they find this little Spanish guy.
They found him at the supermarket.
Yeah. I don't know where they found him, but they throw him next to Eigel, and I mean, it looks absolutely ridiculous. It does. Now, is it effective? Yeah. Is it funny? Sure. Does it stand out? No doubt about it. Is it also cheesy? And is it also an ad that appeals to, in part, the lowest common denominator? No doubt about it. But in a 2-week sprint to the finish line, where you are seeing and hearing political ad after political ad after political ad, your goal is to stand out. And it is indisputable that Bill Eigel is standing out. And by the way, it's also a message that polls very well with Republicans, not just in Missouri, but by the way, around the country, and not just Republicans. Because of how Joe Biden has handled the border, or not handled the border, immigration has now become a top 2 issue in many polls. So Bill Eigel is tapping into that. And he's clearly making it a central theme for his campaign here over the next 2 weeks. Now, next time he's on the show, I will ask him once again how exactly you are going to round up illegal immigrants in Missouri and get them out of the state without federal help. I think it's easier to do with some type of federal help, right? If you get Trump back in the White House and you get the feds to help you with this, it becomes much easier. But you know that a Biden or Harris administration is not going to help the state of Missouri with this, so how do you go about doing it? That's the part that, needs some answering from Bill Eigel. But just in terms of a pure political ad, it cuts through, man, in a way that other ads simply just don't. 913-408-7957. This is on the text line. Pete, I heard the ad this morning on Channel 9, and it took me by surprise. Okay, so some of you are seeing it here locally. I have not seen it yet locally, but I'm guessing because Bill Eigel also just got a big infusion of cash from what I was just reading yesterday, you may see that more and more here in Kansas City in the days ahead. But it's one of those things that, listen, it is hard to find a message that cuts through in today's political climate, and that does it. Now, take it all with a grain of salt, right? I mean, it's what I see from Bill Eigel is very Eric Greitens-ish without the Eric Greitens charm. Eric Greitens, whether you love him or hate him, the guy had political charisma and charm. Bill Eigel does not have that level of political charisma and charm to him that Eric Greitens had. Even if you couldn't stand Greitens, he had that. You had to give that much to him. Eigel doesn't have it. But as we head down the home stretch here, I mean, this race is razor thin between Bill Eigel, Jay Ashcroft, and Mike Kehoe in the Missouri governor's race. If I had to handicap it now, I'd give Kehoe a slight edge over Ashcroft, and Eigel's running third, but I think Eigel is closing that gap, and he's closing it fast. And now we're sitting here with less than 2 weeks to go until voting day in Missouri on Tuesday, August 6th. And, I mean, it's going to be a race to the finish. And polling as well, you always take polling in this stuff with a grain of salt. You think polling is bad nationally. It's arguably even worse when you talk about statewide. So that's where you have to say, okay, it's really just we're all guessing at this point. But Kehoe has the most money that matters in politics. He's been up all over the state. He has PAC money behind him as well. So I'd give him the edge. And the other reason I give him the edge is because Ashcroft and Eigel are both going for the more conservative Missouri Republican. So they're more likely to potentially split that vote over the next couple of weeks, whereas Kehoe is not running as much in that true conservative lane. Although, of course, he does have the backing of police unions and police groups and stuff like that. So that's worth something, certainly, to a lot of people. On the text line, Pete, no matter what the Republicans do about illegal immigrants, there will be a liberal judge somewhere declaring it unconstitutional. So I'm not sure any of this matters. It's entirely possible. You might very well be right. And I will ask Mike Kehoe about the ad. He is going to be on the show at 8 o'clock this morning, so I will get his reaction to now the most explosive ad of the 2024 election cycle right here in Missouri. 913-408-7957. That's the studio line and the text line on KCMO Talk Radio. As we roll through a busy Wednesday morning, Joe Biden will address the nation tonight for the first time since dropping out of the 2024 election It will air at 7 p.m. here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, so you can hear it here tonight just after 7 o'clock when Joe Biden gets set to address the nation. Now, as for the new nominee, the likely nominee, Kamala Harris, what will work, what will not work? All of that is going to be playing out in the days and weeks ahead, and we will get to it coming up on 95.7 FM KCMO and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Now, let's not put it past a very stupid Republican Party to screw this whole thing up with Kamala Harris. If they listen too much to social media, if they listen too much to what they see on X, they will screw it up. They can absolutely lose to Kamala Harris, who, of course, has now been anointed as the successor to Joe Biden. He will address the nation tonight for the first time at 7 o'clock since he dropped out of his re-election attempt. That will air at 7 p.m. here on KCMO Talk Radio, so just tune in tonight. You will hear Joe Biden addressing the nation. I don't know if it's going to be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or 50 minutes, but it will be here on KCMO. That being said, Kamala Harris is wildly beatable. But if you are Donald Trump, his campaign, any Republican, the way to do it is not going to be through DEI this, DEI that. Now, we do know that Joe Biden said in 2020, after George Floyd was killed, that he was going to pick a woman of color to be his running mate. So it is fair to say that part of the reason Kamala Harris got her job is because of her gender and her skin color. I mean, that's why Joe Biden should have just picked her instead of doing the whole, grandiose announcement of, I'm going to pick a woman of color. Look at me. I'm such a good guy, because you diminish the person that you are picking. It's the same thing he did with his Supreme Court pick with Ketanji Brown Jackson. Just make the pick and say she's the best one for the job. Don't announce that you're picking somebody based on their gender and their skin color, because all you do is drag that individual down. It's so dumb, but, they want so much credit in this woke-a-doke world that they want to make sure you know that this person is a fill-in-the-blank. Instead of just picking them, and they happen to be a woman of color. Oh, wow. Oh, look at that. Okay. All right. Whatever. Instead of just taking that approach, they have to virtue signal ahead of time. And that's why they get themselves into these binds. And if you note any of that, they call you a racist. It's like, no, you're the one who said that you were picking somebody based on their race. So you're the one who's factoring race into this. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, if you recognize that, you're a racist. It's kind of like the old Abbott and Costello, who's on first. And Shapiro did a whole thing on this a couple of weeks ago that was very funny. But this is the world that they have created. That being said, this is not the play. This is not the way to go. Don't make this all about Kamala Harris, DEI hire, Willie Brown. Just don't do that. That's not going to win the election for Donald Trump. You know what is going to win the election? Talking about how Kamala Harris has been deeply hostile to American energy, calling for bans on fracking. She has failed miserably as the border czar on the southern border. It was her responsibility, and she failed colossally at it. Talk about how in 2020 she urged her supporters to post bail for BLM rioters, even tweeting payment links to help bail people out of jail who were allegedly committing crimes during the summer of 2020. Those are the things that should be focused on with Kamala Harris. Not the, dumb DEI hire nonsense, not the Willie Brown nonsense. I mean, that's not what is going to win you the election. It might get you clicks on social media, but social media is not real life. And Republicans and conservative folks like to say that, but they don't actually, many of them, live it. They think that their Facebook pages are the real world. They think that their X accounts and the amount of X reposts they get are the real world. That's not the real world. Here's a very effective ad that's already up in Pennsylvania, which, of course, is a key state in this election cycle, that, is pointing out that Kamala Harris was called, when she was in the U.S. Senate, the most liberal U.S. senator per GovTrack, which is a nonpartisan organization. And, they use some of the things that she has said during her political career against her. Let's roll this ad that's up and running right now in various states around the country since she was dubbed by Joe Biden the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. Roll the tape.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE. Yeah. Is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What people
yes.
To reduce red meat specifically.
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bombers, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on. I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
We did it, Joe.
Well, the laugh, the cackle in the background is pretty ominous and is pretty good. But when you focus actually on things that Kamala Harris has said, and that's what that ad effectively does, that's the game changer right there. Not her personal history, not how she got selected to be vice president. You're just going to give, the media and Kamala Harris's campaign the chance to play the victim card. All you have to do is use things that she has said to talk about why she would be a bad president. That's it. That's all it's going to take. It does not need to be any more complex than that. When you talk about, having conversations about eliminating private insurance, when you talk about, giving people like the Boston Marathon bomber the right to vote, once again, open to the conversation. When you talk about, defunding the police, when you talk about border policy, all those things are effective. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still not entirely convinced that Kamala Harris is going to be the one. I know the media is in overdrive this week on her behalf, but there still is one holdout, and it's the biggest holdout to endorse Kamala Harris, and it's Barack Obama. He still hasn't done it, and with each passing day that Obama does not throw his support behind Kamala Harris, it makes you wonder why. What else might be lingering? What else might be out there? Obama's a smart, savvy politician. He knows that having these things out there, in Kamala Harris's words, are not going to be good for her in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Obama, regardless of what you think of him, he's a very smart politician. Maybe the smartest when it comes to pure politics of our lifetime. And he knows these things are problematic for her. And that's why with each passing day that he holds out, despite the media talk about all the money being raised, trying to find good polling for her, I've got to see what Obama's doing first before I go any further. Now, on the other side, what is Trump doing? Trump is playing golf. He's playing golf, by the way, with some of the most popular golfers on the planet. I would argue the most popular golfer on the planet right now. And it goes to show you how the climate is changing when it comes to using social media influencers or celebrities to further one's political agenda and the ability to get them elected. It's no longer about the George Clooney's of the world. That ship has sailed. Just ask Joe. We'll tell you what Trump's doing on this front, how he's using golfers to his benefit next on KCMO Talk Radio. You are seeing social media and pop culture play a whole new role in this presidential election. You know, you think back 15, 16 years ago now, and it was a big deal when Barack Obama had a couple of big-timers in Hollywood and musicians like Bruce Springsteen and John Bon Jovi come out and support his candidacy. Well, now there is a push in a fragmented media and entertainment landscape. It's not about George Clooney and Julia Roberts. I mean, unless you're a super woke boomer, who cares about George Clooney and Julia Roberts? Nobody. That was great if you were Bill Clinton, if you were Al Gore 25, 30 years ago. It's mostly irrelevant today unless you're just trying to double down on a boomer Democratic base. But you are seeing now Donald Trump and Kamala Harris go after younger people in different ways. So let's start with Trump. Trump, if you haven't seen, played golf with Bryson DeChambeau, who is right now the best golfer on the planet, who is also, a social media star, who is a guy who likes the spotlight, unlike other golfers who are, let's be honest, fairly boring. Bryson DeChambeau is not. The guy hits the ball a freaking mile. He is also on the LIV Golf Tour. He's not on the PGA Tour anymore, which is very bad for the PGA Tour. I know, Mark. I understand. I feel the same way. But at the same time, the PGA Tour has been its own worst enemy, so I don't feel all that bad. But I agree. I wish he was still on the PGA Tour. But Trump played golf with DeChambeau. They made a whole YouTube movie or video out of it where they were trying to break 50 on the golf course. And some of these clips are starting to come out. And it's very obvious that, Trump is not just doing this because it's fun and he likes golf. He's doing it for his own political purposes. He's trying to tap into that young male voter that is going to be, in the golf world, that kind of like frat bro guy who plays golf, who likes Bryson DeChambeau, who may very well help Donald Trump win in 2024. So it's these politicians going for much more niche target demos than they've ever gone for before. This is really Trump appealing to the 18 to 35, maybe 45-year-old, probably white male. Now, young voters have always leaned left, but the polling would suggest that Donald Trump is actually closing the gap with young voters in a way that Republicans have not in a very long time. And using Bryson DeChambeau is potentially going to be a pretty effective way to do it. So here's a clip, by the way. This is Trump on a par 3, sticking it, within 10 feet of the hole, and it's just hysterical classic Trump. Take a listen to what this sounded like.
Oh, beautiful. Come on. Oh, what a shot. Partner. Great shot. That's how you do it right there. Gosh.
You think Biden can do that? I don't know. We had an argument about golf. Can you believe it?
I saw on
partner.
CNN.
I don't even know if Bryson can do that.
I don't think I could do that. If President Trump gets inside of me, I don't know what's going on. All right, so 111. Going to play this 110. Just a yard short.
Could be good.
Sit.
Oh, a little much, huh?
Sit. Oh, it's going to spin. I think you might have the better angle.
All right, so that was Bryson DeChambeau and Donald Trump in this YouTube video they created here in the last few days that's starting to get a lot of attention on social media. And first off, how about Trump? Do you think Biden can do that? You think Biden can stick it to within 10 feet? We had an argument about golf. Yeah. The only mistake Bryson made there. Yeah. Oh, how good is that, John? That is just gold, isn't it?
It's funny. Yeah, classic.
Oh, man. All-time Trump stuff right there. So he sticks it to within 10 feet. You think Biden can do that? And DeChambeau goes off, and he's having a great time. And clearly this is about politics, right? This is about Trump trying to tap into that younger male voter because, as I said yesterday and as I predicted, this is going to be a massive gender gap election. I think males, and the polling would suggest, are going to break overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. That was the case when Joe Biden was in the race. I think that gender gap between men and women may only grow if Kamala is ultimately at the top of the ticket. So that's happening for Donald Trump right now. He's trying to tap into that side of the electorate. And then on the other side, you've got Kamala Harris going all in. And I admit, I'm going to sound like an old guy. I mean, suddenly millennials are starting to feel old compared to Gen Z, because Kamala is leaning in on this viral song of summer from Charli XCX. And I guess the album is labeled Brat. So now what Kamala Harris is going for on social media is this whole Brat, Summer of Brat movement that is taking over younger women. Since this Charli XCX album, which is called Brat, came out last month, and I guess, and it shows how out of touch I am, has become the talk of summer amongst young women. So you're seeing this play out where Donald Trump targeting young men through people like Bryson DeChambeau, and Kamala Harris targeting young women through pop stars that I've never heard of, I admit, like Charli XCX. So it's so different from saying, I just need George Clooney's endorsement. I just need John Bon Jovi's endorsement. Those days are over. Now you can segment this stuff in very effective ways, and that's how we're seeing this all play out right now. And it is fascinating to follow because entertainment is so fragmented, media is so fragmented, that is now creating a world where politicians have to react and be more fragmented in who they target.